Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole, Fernie City Council, held at 6 p.m. on, actually 6:01 p.m. on August 15th, 2023. Kisukyukia. To begin, we'll acknowledge that the City of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of Yakutat and Kliat. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. The Kanahunik are from Yakutat and Kliat and are members of the Tanaha-speaking people of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. I'll call this meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted by in-person and electronic means in accordance with Council Procedure Bylaw number 2446. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that if the communication link to the specified place of this meeting is interrupted and cannot be restored within 15 minutes, the meeting shall adjourn and reconvene to the soonest possible time that quorum can be achieved and the public notice requirements met. Moved by Councilor Hamilton, seconded by Councilor Ramdas. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Now I'll ask for approval of the agenda and any late items. I need a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda for August 15th. Moved by Councilor Kaiser, seconded by Councilor Audie Kelly. All those in favor? Thank you. Councilor Ramdas.
Your Worship, I'd like to add a late item. Actually, I'll suspend the rules of the meeting to add a new item, new business item to the agenda.
Okay.
So motion to suspend the rules. Is there a seconder for that one?
Councilor Audie Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor?
You know what we're voting on?
Suspending the rules, apparently.
Okay.
And then I believe Councilor Ramdas wants to make a motion
Thank you, Your
to
Worship.
add an item to the agenda.
Thank you, Your Worship. My motion here is that council directs staff to bring back a report regarding the design selected for the 2023 road rehabilitation project, including an overview of current engagement and change management process with residents. This is in, that's my motion.
Yeah, so I believe the motion is to add that item to the agenda as item 7.2.
Okay, moved by Councilor Ramdas, seconded by Councilor Shoesmith. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you.
So that will be discussed at item 7.2.
And can you remind me of that?
Yes, I will, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Still struggling why the specific call for late items is not the appropriate place.
I know.
I'm dropping it.
We are reviewing our council procedure bylaw.
If I may, Your Worship, as well, that was reviewed, and then in Mr. Ramdas, Councilor Ramadas's request, we had started this precedent, so rather than trying to change precedent just at the last minute,
Understood.
we went with that one. But yes, that will be specifically addressed within the next procedure bylaw review. So thank you for that opportunity to address that.
And now I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on July 18th, 2023. Moved by Councilor Audie Kelly, seconded by Councilor Shoesmith. Any discussion on the contents of the minutes? Seeing none. All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit, and a speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes. And so I'll ask Ms. Rhodes if there's anyone present at the specified place or online who's indicated a desire to speak.
No, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Moving on, we now have a report from Director Jensen. Over to you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to bring this project forward to you tonight on the fire hall replacement project. Before I introduce our consultants from Arcadis, who will present the bulk of the material, I'll just ask Samuel Altor from Arcadis to share the screen. I think we've just promoted him, so that'll just be a moment. Hi Samuel, when you're ready, please share your screen.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Let me just share the screen and we'll get going. Can you see the screen?
We can.
Okay, we're ready to go then. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead.
So the update this evening is primarily regarding the pre-planning phase of the fire hall replacement project, but I did want to briefly take a zoom out and talk to the project broadly, as it is a multi-year complex project. So Samuel, would you mind flipping to the next slide, please? Okay. So you're already familiar with the decommissioning of our 392 3rd Avenue Fire Hall in 2022. The facility was at end of life and it was not purpose-built for a fire hall. It has a long history of facility concerns. There's several studies over the years, the decades, and initiatives undertaken to resolve. Specifically, there were structural and air quality concerns. Concerns for the safety of our team members being paramount, and retrofits and improvements to the building were explored and were considered cost prohibitive and still would not provide adequate facility for current or future growth needs. So Council did receive a report in May from Manager of Engineering Weir that had a detailed background on that, and happy to reshare that after this meeting if anybody wants to have a look at that. So in 2022, we relocated the fire hall operations to the public works yard across several buildings and gated areas. It's a temporary option to deliver services, but not suitable for a future fire hall. Our consultants will touch on site criteria in the presentation today. High level criteria is on the opposite side of the tracks from our downtown core, our commercial density, and it's to dispatch any call they're driving right through a school zone. So we're now taking a renewed approach to the pre-planning phase. So this pre-planning work, we're seeing it as integral to the success of this multi-year project. There have been several or various iterations of site selection, potential partnership, and site designs done in the last several years. And it's become clear that a more transparent and inclusive process with upfront focus, determining any potential current opportunities that should be considered would be integral to the success of this project. So recognizing that we are seeking to build a generational facility, we want to ensure that the community is involved in all stages of this process, and recognizing that these early stages are critical to getting the support required to be successful. So as I indicated earlier, representatives from Arcadis Professional Services are here today. They're our pre-planning consultant team, and are here tonight to provide an overview of the pre-planning scope of work, where we are at in that process, and what to expect moving forward. Samuel, may you flip to the next slide? Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of the full project scope from a high level. So we're looking at a multi-year endeavor. The first two phases being significantly complex with our eyes on operational in 2026. This is a very aggressive timeline, and so it's quite critical that we remain on target for this pre-planning phase so that we can meet these goals here. So, Samuel, will you flip to the next slide, please? So I'll just dive in and introduce our representatives from the Arcadis team. We have quite a team of professionals from the city of Fernie, cross-functional across all of our departments, all key players, as well as the Arcadis team. Tonight we've got Samuel Altor, who will speak to you primarily, do the whole presentation. He is the Associate Manager of Planning at Arcadis. He's a PhD RPP and a member of MCIP, and he's been in the game a long time. We're lucky to have him on our team. And his colleague Asia Stanty is the engagement specialist from the planning team, who will speak to some of the initial internal engagement that we did in the end of June. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to that team to dive in.
Thank you, Lisa, and good evening again, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. After the very kind introduction and very informative introduction provided by Director Jansen, what we're going to do is share with you some of what we understand of what is the project background, what is the project schedule that we have for this project, and what is the scope of what we're going to be doing in the pre-planning phase. Some of the key messaging that we're going to be using throughout the process, what is our approach to the engagement and discussion with the community, and what we have completed up to date, and some of the next steps that we see in the coming in the next few weeks. If there are any questions at any point, please let me know. I have the full screen, so I don't know if anybody is raising their hand, but if somebody can let me know, I'll be happy to address those questions. We understand that the city of Fernie provides fire and emergency services not only to the city, but also to some of the surrounding rural areas, with a total of probably 10,000 residents, which is significant. And that overall, the fire and emergency services team, led by the fire chief, deputy fire chief, and air career firefighters, they provide service to and respond to just over 400 emergency calls. So this is a very important service for the community, and what we're going to try to do through this process of collaboration with the city is to assist in the pre-planning study to identify the suitable site for a new potential fire hall that really creates that benefit for the community. As Director Jansen alluded to, we've already reviewed some of the previous reports. Those have been informative in terms of what are the alternative sites that have been looked at. But we understand that it is now the intent to really open the conversation, to really allow for input from the community. And we are committed to facilitating that process in a way that I'm going to describe in detail in the next few slides. Needless to say, the importance of the project we share, and we have had the opportunity to collaborate with other jurisdictions in Alberta that we can contribute also some of that learned knowledge and lessons learned to this process. So our approach to the project like this, particularly when we have a very tight schedule, is very much collaborative with the city's team. And that is exactly what we have been enjoying with Director Jansen and her team since the beginning of the project in late May. That's what allowed us to really promptly schedule the initial site visit and the introductory sessions with internal stakeholders in June. So that is essentially phase one. And that is our discovery phase, when we learn about the project, what has been discussed, what are the initial thoughts that the direct users and the indirect users are thinking for this project. We're currently in phase two, in which we have been preparing some documents, the engagement, communication, and education plan that will guide our approach to facilitate that informed dialogue with the community. As part of phase 2 as well, and as you are probably familiar, we collaborated in the issue of the terms of reference for the community working group. It's a process that ended last Friday. And also in the issue of the expression of interest for potential partners and landowners that was issued also in late July, in early July, I'm sorry, and that is scheduled to close on August 25th. We are glad to report that we have received very good response to the community working group. We received 17 responses, and our team is currently reviewing those responses in collaboration with the city's team. Um, we are currently addressing you today on the 15th of August, and we hope to be back in late October to share with you what we heard from the community after we go through the engagement process, and then back again on November 28th to share with you some of our findings and recommendations to that date. And that is going to link directly to phase 3, which is part of our scope, which is to really guide and facilitate the site selection process. And based on the sites that we received in response to the expression of interest, we'll be able to determine what is a conceptual layout that could inform and accommodate a facility for this important project. Part of that scope is that once we have a potential site that has been discussed with the community through the community working group, that we have reviewed some of the potential partners' responses, then we'll be in a position to estimate some costing and provide some alternatives for funding strategies. And all that is going to be shared with you through administration and also in November 28th. We are cognizant of the tight timeline that you have to make decisions for the next budget cycle, and that's why we're targeting to have that information for you in November. However, our project timeline extends into the next year, in which we intend to have a draft preliminary planning report in January, and then through feedback received from the city administration, we'll complete the revisions to have the final report completed by end of February. So as you can see, we are already kind of halfway through the process, and we are just preparing to really start a positive dialogue with the community. And we'll touch on where we are on that process briefly. This is just a snapshot of where we are and what is coming forward. After we brief you today, we'll continue to review those responses to facilitate the assembling of the community working group, because we will need their input once we start reviewing some of the responses to the potential sites and potential partners. Then we'll be preparing for the public open house, which is scheduled for September 28th. And after that, we'll prepare what we heard report, and then again come back to you in October and then back in November with some recommendations. Some of the key messages that we've discussed with the city's team are essentially grouped in three categories. The first is to emphasize that the fire and emergency services is an essential services that extends beyond the boundary of the city, and there's an urgent need to address a proper location that facilitates the response times. Um, we also know that we want to take this opportunity to ensure that the new fire hall is effective, functional, and really multiplies community benefits. That's why, as part of this process, and once we receive responses to the expression of interest, we really like to explore the possibility of having co-location of uses to multiply potentially community benefits. We won't know this for sure until we review the responses to the expression of interest from partners and landowners. But as the Director Jansen indicated, there is a commitment to try to make this a generational investment identify a site that allows for new growth and that really can anchor funding alternatives with other provincial, federal, or other partners that are in the community already. Another group of key messages that we're going to be sharing with the community is that the site selection process is looking at city-owned and privately identified land. And we're going to use a multiple criteria to guide an objective decision-making process so that it's clear and transparent to all how we are arriving at our recommendations. And this is going to be a facilitated, transparent process uh, that will include the community input and stakeholder engagement as part of the decision. And the last set of key messages that we're sharing is that uh, because of the background on this particular project, we want to make sure that this is a transparent process that everybody can understand how decisions are being made. It builds on previous conversations and will continue to build on the information that is discovered through the process. And that we're going to have continued communication to the community. There's already a website on this particular project on Let's Talk Fernie, and we're going to use that portal to keep the community abreast of our progress and upcoming events as we move forward to make the engagement as accessible as possible. I understand from the city's team that you're already familiar with the AIP2 engagement spectrum. This is the International Association of Public Participation. We tend to rely on this spectrum for all of our projects. Excuse me.
Sorry, Mr. Alatorre, one second.
Thank you, Roshan. Just have a question
Yeah.
before Mr. Alatorre goes into the next section. Just in terms of your experience working with other municipalities during the pre-planning stage, what are some of the challenges that you find, and have you identified those challenges here also?
Well, from previous experiences, what we find is that it is often that we're going to find different stakeholder groups that have different perspectives on what is being proposed. And it is part of our job and our scope to try to balance those different views. We understand from the background of this particular project, and of course, every jurisdiction is unique in the context and settings, uh, that there have been some previous sites that have been reviewed that there were different opinions on those. So what we like to do during this process is to really lay out the opportunity for any potential partners and landowners that want to be part of this conversation to respond. And that's where the expression of interest was issued to facilitate that conversation. We also anticipate that we'll have community insight coming through the community working group. And we're looking forward to really collaborate with them because they really would have a sense of what are the issues that may be important for the community to be addressed. It is premature, let's say, for us to identify key issues for this particular process as we're just beginning to, let's say, open the door for that dialogue. But we'll be sure to keep you informed as issues or concerns or opportunities arise.
Thank you, Roshan.
Thank you. Please carry on.
Thank you. So this is a framework that allows us to be reactive and proactive in terms of identifying stakeholder groups or groups of interest that may have an opportunity to contribute to this process. We obviously, as I mentioned, this is a fluid uh, framework. So as we start learning who the participants of the community working group are and who the responders to the EOI are, then we'll have a better sense of what is the role for each of those groups to be played within this spectrum. Uh, the engagement plan that we have prepared and submitted to the city's team is generally structured along these themes. The objective, as I've mentioned earlier, is to guide decision-making and an informed planning process that leads to a good decision for the new fire hall, and identified and opened the door for potential contributions and participation from the community. We intend to facilitate a process that leads to build consensus. This is something that we've been able to do in other similar assignments in other jurisdictions, and to really have an informed and proactive dialogue. We use the framework that I showed earlier to identify what are the impacted parties and what would be their potential level of influence. And we'll keep this as an ongoing conversation with the city's team. We'll uh, inform the community and of course council on a timely basis on the engagement events that we're planning, and bring you back the summaries of what we've heard through the process. We have, as I mentioned, we've been working collaboratively with the city's team, and we have a clear understanding of roles and responsibilities, and it's been enjoyable to work with them so far, and I'm sure that we'll continue on that path. And finally, the communication plan and education strategy. This will help us to really fine tune the messages and the packaging of those messages so that everybody is informed of what's coming next, how they can participate, and how they can contribute to this project. Some of the topics that are included in the materials that we've shared with the city's team are essentially indicating, providing some of the project background, how we plan to go about the process, what are the schedule and milestones, what is going to be part of the criteria, and I'll touch on that in more details shortly. Site location and options, we'll know more about that once we get a new set of sites coming through the responses to the EOI. Uh, and then as we move into phase 3 of our work, we'll probably be exploring what are the guiding rationale for the facility concept design, technical analysis based from previous assignments, and then provide the costing for budget and funding strategy. Communications method, as I mentioned, we have Let's Talk Fernie. We're going to have an open house, and we'll have continued workshops with some of the key stakeholders that are going to be the users, direct or indirect users of the potential facility. So in essence, and I don't want to be too repetitive, the public engagement overview is going to be based on 3 channels of communication: an active collaboration with the community working group throughout the process until we complete the report, uh, a response to public expression of interest, and any feedback that we get in online and in-person engagement sessions. So we're going to now share with you what we've done to date. It was briefly mentioned during or when I was talking about the project schedule. We had our initial site visits, initial interactions with some of the internal stakeholder groups. We had sessions, and we're going to be presenting some of those results shortly. And we're preparing now for the review of and designation or identification of the community working group members. For this section, I would like to invite my colleague Aisha Estante to facilitate this information. Aisha, are you available there?
Yep, I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
We can.
Great. Hello, Mayor and Council, and some of the people I recognize from one of our engagement sessions. Hello, how are you? So in our first engagement sessions, we went over to the city of Fernie and had a couple of engagement sessions. We did a tour first, a couple of site tours, and we also discussed the city inventory and the suitability of the sites. We had the opportunity to have 2 sessions with, one of them was with the City of Fernie firefighters, and the other was with some internal business units. Maybe if you can go to the next one there, Sam. We were able to discuss a number of fire hall site criteria in our site suitability, we were able to present some information to our stakeholders, to the sessions. And when we were talking about the suitability of the fire hall sites that we were talking about, these were some of the things that we brought up. So we were talking about land use and servicing, and some of the things that came up in those criteria were, is this properly zoned? What is the size? Something that you need to be aware of is that it has to be at least 1.5 acres to house a fire hall. What is the topography? Is it flat and easy to develop? Is there any future growth potential? We don't want it to be subject to any flooding because it's going to take a lot longer to develop or protect from flooding. And is there existing servicing on the site? And what is the serviceability? Another category is things that fall into access and location. So where is it located? We had a couple of discussions with different groups on being on the west side of the CPR tracks or on the east side. If it's on the east side, it's going to add some time to the response times, versus proximity to current or future density. Easy to access and egress, so coming into the site, whether that is your firefighters being able to get to the site and also being able to exit from the site when there is a call, having pedestrian and bike access, and having parking for your firefighters and also potential future co-users. And then similarly, adjacent road volume, so having a good balance between being able to access the site and also being able to easily get out of the site if there is a response. And then the final one category that we have here is the function of the site. So does it function effectively as a fire hall when there is a fire hall on it? And does the current site function effectively as a fire hall? Is it resource efficient? And does it have the ability to support other services or users beyond just a fire hall? Is there potential to, have to support and bring in other users? Does it have a community connection? We talked a couple of times about, being able to show the community what the firefighters do. We wanted to have a connection to the city networks, the intranet, and being able to support a specialized training facility. That is important to some users. It may not be important to others. Long-term sustainability, both in terms of longevity and in terms of environmental sustainability, and then also the impact to existing users and uses of the site. And then the surrounding services, so whether that is in the downtown business area or whether that's in a residential area. So there's a couple discussions going on around that. Go to the next one. So while we were there, we had two sessions. One of them was with the actual firefighters. We had 9 members of the Fernie Fire Department, including the fire chief and the deputy chief. While we were there, we only discussed city-owned sites. We wanted to make sure that we had control over what we were able to portray. So we only wanted to discuss sites that we actually could say that, this is a site that we potentially could use for a fire hall. And there were essentially 4 parts to the session. So we first provided background information about the project and the potential sites. We provided a little bit of background about the previous studies that were done. We discussed the suitability, just as we discussed in the last slides, and then some of the criteria that would be used for the evaluation. Then the participants were asked to rank potential criteria on a scale of 1 to 4, where 1 was not important at all, and then 4 was something that they thought would be essential in a site that they would want to have a fire hall on. And during this time, participants could also add criteria as they saw fit. And this was what the firefighters ranked as most important and then least important. So there were other ones as well, but these were the top 5 and then the bottom 5 as well. The way that we did this was we took all of the criteria, added them up and weighted them. So for example, the top 3 there that you see have a score of 4. All 9 participants all gave that a score of 5, so essentially, or a 4. So essentially it was 9 times 4 divided by 4. And so that's why you got that score of 4. And then the bottom one, there was 9 times 1 divided by 9. So that got a score of 1. And then the next exercise that we did, we asked the participants to provide some feedback on and rate potential co-use partners on a scale of 1 to 4 as well, where 1 was something that was completely incompatible and 4 was something that was very compatible. During this time, participants could also suggest additional co-tenants if they so the Emergency Operations Center was something that the firefighters thought would be really compatible, followed by the EMS and RCMP. And then down on the bottom, we have child care facility as something that they thought would be very incompatible. And then just before we move on, we did go through and have them rate their likes and dislikes of the 4 sites that we presented. And then we had a little bit of time for feedback and went over some general comments about all of the sites. And then this session was run in a similar manner. There was just different attendees. So we had internal business units from the City of Fernie representatives. We had everyone from, there were 8 attendants. We had the fire chief again. We had somebody from Parks, Facilities and Recreation, Director of Corporate Services, the CAO, Director of Planning, Deputy Director of Finance, Communications Coordinator, and the Director of Engineering and Public Works. And so this one was run quite similar to the last one. We wanted to remain consistent throughout all of the engagement sessions, as consistent as we could, recognizing that we want the criteria to be the same, even though the participants are going to be different. And so this was the most important and least important rated criteria overall. So here we have the connectivity to the city network and protection from flooding as the top 2. And then the bottom ones are that the site is a landmark, has landmark potential, and that it fits into planning and policy framework. That was primarily because there isn't really planning and policy framework that it has to fit into. And then this one here, there was some similarity among the potential partnership compatibility around the Emergency Operations Center, the RCMP, search and rescue, and then down at the bottom, you can see those similarities kind of around the rec center, community pool, those similarities down at the bottom.
Thank you, Aisha.
Yeah, thank you.
And again, this was our initial sessions with the internal stakeholder groups. This provides some feedback into the criteria as it's been refined, so that by the time we get a new set of or a complete set, let's say, of potential sites and landowners and partners, then we're going to go through that criteria again, and then probably come back to the internal stakeholders and external stakeholders and say, well, this is the refined criteria based on the previous exercise that we did. Now we're looking at all these different sites, not only city-owned sites, and we're going to do that exercise again, and that will inform we're going to be bringing back to you in late October. So talking about the community working group, the terms of reference were issued in mid-July. As I mentioned earlier, the time to respond closed last Friday. There were 17 responses. And the purpose of the community working group is to participate and represent the diverse interests of the community. So we're really hoping that they are a constant liaison to the community discussions that are happening around this project. And we want to ensure, and this has been discussed with the city's team, that we have a variety of different voices and opinions, so that the process itself is enriched, so that we can have different opinions about the sites that may be coming up after August 25th. This was the guiding principles that were made public with the issue of the terms of reference. So the mandate for the community working group is to ensure health and safety for the whole community, to support current emergency service delivery levels and future growth, provide industry standard fire facility to serve the community, plan for a financially achievable and sustainable project, and create a community serving and community building project that invokes civic pride. Again, this is the mandate for the members of the community working group, and we are hoping that we're going to be facilitating those discussions probably starting in the next couple of weeks to bring them up to speed on where we are, how they see the role, informing of their procedures, and get them going. This is just a summary of what I've repeated. The initial engagement we're anticipating to be in early September. Once we provide some recommendations, have discussions with the city team about the formation of the CWG. We intend to have their input as we approach the public open house based on the progress and the assessment of the uh, potential partners and properties that we would have received by then. And then bring them along in every step of the discussion as we are making progress through our scope and schedule. The other opportunity for participation that was issued was the expression of interest for potential partners, and this is to invite partnerships from public members and organizations in the planning stage to really align visions and really align commitments, so that this is a joint effort given the scope of the services that the fire and emergency department provides even beyond the city, and explore opportunities for co-use, therefore multiplying benefits for the community, but also having some other agencies to assist with the funding, and that is something that is going to be explored within the funding strategies. Again, the deadline to respond is August 25th. It's coming up soon, and then we're going to go through that review of the sites and potential partnership offers. Our next steps, and this is the last slide, and I thank you for your patience. Again, we're working with the city's team in reviewing and following up on this process that have been initiated. We're going to start setting up the functioning of the community working group and really start preparing for the analysis of the potential sites, and then leading that into the open house, and then be back with you in October 28th to tell you what we heard from the community. That concludes my presentation, and we're happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you both for the presentation, and Director Jansen. Councillor Shoesmith, you had a question?
Yes, I was just wondering if we had good responses to the expressions of interest. Have there been many?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Shoesmith, the application period hasn't closed yet, so it's open for another 10 days, and we'll get an indication then. But we've reached out to several public sector potential partners that we've identified through our internal engagement process, and we've let them know directly about the opportunity. And we'll be following up with them.
Just as a follow-up, Director Jansen, is there expression of interest? Is it a complex requirement, or they just have to indicate interest?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Great question. It's actually, we've set out a very basic form, which is contact information, some very basic details, and then a letter of interest. So it is preliminary. We're inviting them to have more conversations and determine if there's synergies within this project scope. So it's, we were pretty focused on making it not an onerous process.
Thank you. Councillor Ramos.
Thank you, Richard. Just wanted to compliment both Director Jensen and the consultants here. Great job. It's very clear. I think the path to success is very visible here. Good work.
Thank you. Any other questions? A couple just for me for clarification. So the outreach to additional service agencies, that is a separate exercise from the expression of interest. So we've identified certain agencies and we'll reach out directly to them, is that correct?
The expression of it, it's tied in, so thank you, Your Worship. As part of the development of the engagement plan, we went through a process to identify potential project partners. Some of that came from the internal engagement, those potential synergistic opportunities like services for co-use, et cetera. And so we did directly reach out to those folks. We came up with a list, and then we went through our expression of interest process, which is similar to our RFP, which we posted, we shared it, we advertised, but then we also took that extra step to reach out via email to share details and are making follow-up phone calls to agencies and service groups that were identified. And certainly, we've had some inquiries already from community organizations, and it's great that there's some dialogue happening.
Excellent. And so we've had 17 people apply for the community working group, and I'm sorry, I don't know if I should know how many people we want on that working group.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The terms of reference identified 7 folks from the community.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And, sorry, Councillor Evans?
You can go ahead, Worship.
Just one last one for me. The concept design, will Arcadis develop the initial concept design as well?
That's correct, Your Worship. Following phase 2, the public engagement, which we've primarily gone through today, will be the, once we've secured a site through your recommendations, then we'll go through the process of site design and then facility concept design. And we are doing preliminary internal stakeholder engagement with the Fernie Fire and Emergency Services Department on programming current and future growth, which is really just bolstered by existing recent needs analysis and things like that in existing reports. So some of that work is underway, and yes, and you'll be receiving that as part of the project delivery.
Thank you. Councillor Ravdas and then Councillor Hamilton.
Councillor Hamilton, you can go first. I can go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Hamilton.
All right. I know this is probably like 3 steps ahead from what we're talking about right now, but I tried to find it on my own and couldn't, so I'm just wondering if you could clarify. What is the mechanism for a community as it grows to trigger additional fire halls or additional protective services facilities?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hamilton. The Arcadis team is looking at primary site requirements and then looking at future growth. They're looking at our growth projection details. Our planning department is part of our project team. We're discussing where future densification, current densification is occurring and where future is anticipated. And so I don't have the engineering details on what that trigger is. It is population-based, it's distance-based from where that growth happens. But certainly that's part of the consideration when looking at that sustainability component in terms of service.
So just a quick follow-up for clarification. So there is no one specific trigger mechanism, it's a combination of needs analysis, I guess, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, thank you through to Councillor Hamilton. I couldn't speak specifically, but certainly I'll note that. And as we move into phase 3 of the project, the architect and the technical planning team will dive into all of those details. So the intent is to have a clear indication of what our needs are for fire hall number 1 for now and in the future, and also an eye on is depending on the growth and distance of the growth. Are we looking at a secondary site to put in as a future planning opportunity? So we're certainly having those conversations, but we're not planning a second site as part of the scope of this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Ravdas.
Thank you, Worship. Just curious on a couple of slides that I'm not presupposing where this will end up, but I'm just curious to know those bottom items. For example, I can't remember which user group it was where they said co-spacing like childcare, for example, is the least desirable outcome there. So I just wanted to understand like what kind of conversation went there and why it was chosen the lowest.
Yeah, that's a great question, Your Worship, through to Councillor Ramadas. So that's just initial internal business unit discussion. So childcare, similar to housing, they are challenging co-use with fire departments in a community like ourselves, in that fire and emergency services facilities are subject to specific seismic and post-disaster architectural standards. And when you start stacking those types of uses on top of those facilities, they have to meet that standard as well. And so then it becomes cost prohibitive. So that was, I was in attendance at those meetings, and the tone of that was, this is potentially cost prohibitive and therefore perhaps not a likely partner. But they were simply just objectives discussed and to guide our initial work in defining criteria and potential partners.
That's interesting because some of those alternatives could provide funding routes of their own to build in addition to a fire hall.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think the key message is that we're not excluding those potential opportunities. We're certainly looking for organizations in our community that are looking for space to deliver key community benefit to come forward through that expression of interest. So I certainly don't want to have this presentation and that rating out there in the public dissuade anybody in responding to that request for expression of interest for the 25th. So we're going to be looking at it objectively and having dialogue with these folks.
Thank you. Councillor Ramos.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just to follow up, if you may, could you also give some light to the other slide that we had, another user group which had a low rating for, I can't remember which one.
Cool, website.
Was it? Yeah. I'm just curious, what was the color of the conversation, so to say?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Ramadas. I'm just going to flip to that slide so I have a quick look at all of them there in size 5 font. So, as a caveat, the topics, we didn't pre-identify these groups. These were topics brought up by the stakeholders in these sessions. And so then if somebody brought up an item, then it was weighted by the group. And so in terms of specifically, the last one on we had childcare at the bottom of potential partnerships, and then community pool and library. So we obviously have an existing aquatic center that is not at the end of its service life. So as we looked at that particular site and access and other criteria as that group, and we had dialogue around it, the challenge with access and to maintain separation between those services makes it a challenging co-use partnership, but certainly not prohibitive with site design and if you've got the right space. But we are, as Asia Santi indicated, the minimum requirement for land size for a fire hall is 1.5 acres, and that's for a fairly condensed site, and does not include an engineered training facility. So including that would look like more like 2.2 acres. So that was the dialogue really around, we have a pool, it's at an existing site, there are existing constraints there, and therefore there was some dialogue around it maybe not being the best co-use.
Sorry, Ms. Jansen, just to circle back to that, the opportunities to co-locate certain things with the fire hall. I'm just wondering the community working group process, and then there is a a funding strategy implementation discussion that sort of begins in the spring of 2024 and ends in the fall of 2024. And so could I guess I'm trying to articulate this clearly, is there an opportunity if different funding streams are identified later or potentially further down the path that would support also funding for a fire hall and, co-locating community services?
Yeah, great question, Your
Is there
Worship.
an opportunity to change direction at some point?
So the priority in this scope of work is to be transparent, but to build a fire hall.
Yeah,
We need
understood,
that, but we don't know what co-use partners are going to come to the table and how those dialogues will unfold. But as Arcadis has worked on other projects similar to this scope, when you identify a site, you can look at phasing, and so you don't necessarily have to make all of the decisions on co-use partners upfront. And to be clear, Arcadis is doing the bulk of the community working group formation upfront as part of the pre-planning phase, and they will work through their scope of work with that group until the end of February. But the intent is that working group continues through the life of that bigger picture that I shared with you. And so certainly, we all know public facilities are not cheap, and they need to be funded through taxation and other creative ways from federal and provincial agencies and potential shared capital funding models from other groups. And that is of paramount interest to our internal group and Arcadis. And so great question, and the intent is to remain flexible so that we can take advantage of these opportunities.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Alator, you had a comment?
Yes, if I may, Your Worship, just to add to what Director Jansen has already explained, we anticipate that once we have that set of responses to the RAOI, we'll have a better sense of how to frame the conversations and really start exploring what are the alternatives for co-use or not. There was also the question about how to plan for the future. Well, depending on the location of those sites and the assessment that we do, we will provide some recommendations or some guidance in those discussions about, well, if we go with this site one, these are the opportunities for growth, collocate or not collocate, or you need to start planning for the next fire hall already. Obviously, we're hopeful that there's going to be a significant response to the REOI, similar to what was for the community working group.
Excellent, thank you, because I readily recognize I framed it as an opportunity, but it could equally be a trap trying to capture that extra funding. Potentially delay the project if you're
That's the risk.
That's the risk if you push it too far out. So.
Yeah, thank you. That's certainly part of the project team's one of our key outcomes is making sure that we're not delaying this project. We need to build a fire hall, and that's the primary mandate. And I'm looking for those opportunities. And our team and Arcadis is dialed into funding opportunities for at all levels of government, and we're watching and we've seen what other communities are doing in terms of being creative with their co-use partnerships to be able to access additional funding.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions from council? Councillor Ali Kelly.
Just through your worship to Dr. Jansen, just out of curiosity, I think I heard 7 members of the community working group, and we had 17 people. I just wondered how the number 7, is that like an ideal working group size or like?
Yeah, thank you through your worship to Councillor Ali Kelly. It is an ideal through our consultants' recommendations. This is ideal. The team will also include non-voting members from the technical team on city staff and Arcadis, so it will get a little bit bigger. We explored adding a few more, but it is just a large number of folks.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Through your worship, speaking specifically to the working group, given only only 7 seats, 17 applicants at this stage, and currently the timeline for the project is 4 years, 3 years, based on that. During those 3 years, will there be an opportunity for turnover in the working group, or is the intent to keep it the same individuals throughout the life of the project?
Yeah.
And as an addition, if I may, what would the process be should somebody exit the group midway through for whatever circumstances and replacing that person?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hamilton. The latter part of your question is very clear in the TOR. If somebody has to exit, there's a process already identified. That said, in our draft TOR, we should probably consider it, right? What that looks like over the 3-year period for some turnover. So thank you for that feedback, and we'll look at that as we formalize the group over the next few weeks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you, Director Jansen, and thank you, the team from Arcadis. That was very informative. Very much appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you for your time.
This is item 7.2.
7.2.
Yes.
So this is your motion, Councillor Ramdas. Would you like to speak to this item?
Would you like me to read the motion first, Your Worship, and then have a mover and second?
Oh, sure.
Because there's no report accompanying in this particular
Okay.
case. So the motion is that council directs staff to bring back a report regarding the designs selected for the 2023 road rehabilitation project, and include an overview of the engagement undertaken and change management strategies used. And I would recommend receiving mover and seconder.
Well, I assume Councillor Ramdas has moved, since you introduced the motion.
At this point on the agenda.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Ramdas, seconder, Councillor Shoesmith. Discussion. We might start with you, Councillor Ramdas.
Sure, Worship. I just wanted to give a little bit of background as to why I got this motion here. I had an opportunity to speak with citizens there in that particular block, and as you know, Your Worship, they've also sent several emails, not several, maybe one email to all my colleagues here as well. Really, there has been a little bit of discussion around, the hazards from the snow from their shed, and if there was any opportunity for them to look at a possible redesign of the walkway next to their property. So that's the reason why I put this motion. Again, the intent here is not so much to actually ask the staff to redesign, but just for us to understand, what kind of engagement process goes on with the citizens, as well as within the framework of that design, are there any flexibility for us to be a little bit more agile and maybe look at alternative designs also? So just wanted to get some overview from the staff on this, and that's why I put this motion.
Thank you. Any other comments? I appreciate your comment about we're not asking anyone to redesign anything at this juncture. I do think it would be helpful to understand how would I put this, to better understand or to fully understand our standard street design, so that we can, I think as we had discussions at our last regular meeting about, and maybe it was offline, but we are modernizing our infrastructure in old neighborhoods, and it will potentially create challenges in a number of situations, and so we collectively, council and staff, need to anticipate that this is not a one-off. I suspect it has happened in the past and will happen again in the future.
Absolutely, we're fully aware of that, Your Worship, and that's why I wanted this motion, just to understand, as we progress through this roadwork project, are there going to be future such challenges, and what kind of strategies we might have to address it. So just getting a better understanding of public engagement piece, as well as what flexibility we have within the design would be much appreciated.
Okay.
And I also realized that maybe some of the citizens also wanted to call in this evening, but just because of the misunderstanding of how the procedures work, they may not have spoken this evening.
Right, but
Just wanted-
we're beyond our public participation.
Okay, that's what. I just want this to be on public record, so
Yeah.
we can always access this information.
Thank you. Councilor Perez.
Thank you, Worship. I was just to say, I think there's a lot of benefit to this motion. Previous council had a great opportunity, as we went through the whole transportation master plan, to see the development of design guidelines and the communication process with the community and all the stuff that current council has not. So I think a review of that would be very helpful for everyone.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, Councilor Robbins.
Thanks.
Moves us along to correspondence. Any comments, questions, anything catch your eye in our correspondence this evening? I will say I have to read and reread some of the communications from Foothills Pipeline and the Canadian government about what exactly they were asking there. I think I got it in the end.
I couldn't.
It was very technical. Yeah.
I think they do that on purpose.
Councilor Schuster.
I actually rather enjoyed reading that as I was working on that project somewhat and have no idea what's going on.
Thank you for the insight. I didn't feel so bad. No other comments? Sorry, item 8.2, is it a separate item or is it meant to say sit under correspondence as well?
It's under correspondence as well as simply information with
Okay.
respect to the, what is essentially what's formerly known as the gas tax fund.
Yes,
Confirming the funds that are returning to the city.
excellent, thank you.
Which I believe are already in the financial plan. So it's not necessarily new money.
No.
It's
Thank you.
expected money.
Excellent. With that, yes, sorry.
I have a question, like how does this work from previous council or yourself, your worship? How does this thing work?
What's this?
Yeah, the
gas tax?
The gas tax. Well, I know how it works, like how do we figure out criteria for distribution of these funds and so on?
Director Burnett has got his hand in.
Oh, Director Burnett, please, if you can.
He's in the operations.
Thanks, Councillor Ramirez. They have their own formula. It's a federally run program. And you can look up all of the communities in BC and in Canada that receive this to figure out exactly how much we get. So this was a line item on our budget under revenue, and we get 2 separate payments per year from this program.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Burnett.
Oh, I remember, sorry.
Yeah. And I think British Columbia is unusual in that UBCM administers this for the province,
Oh, interesting.
for the federal government. Any other comments? Seeing none, we will adjourn the committee of the whole, and we will take a 5-minute recess before we convene the special meeting.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Oh, can we do the secrets?
You want to talk about that?
We have to.
Sadly.
Always district. I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back, everyone, to this special meeting of council, Fernie City Council held at 7:17 PM on August 25th, or no, August 15th, sorry, 2023. And once again, we acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of Yakutat and Clea. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. The Kanahunit are from Yakutat and Clea and are members of the Tanaha-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. Call this meeting to order. And this meeting is being conducted by electronic means in accordance with Council Procedure Bylaw number 2446. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that if the communication link to the specified place for this meeting is interrupted and cannot be restored within 15 minutes, the meeting shall adjourn and reconvene to the soonest possible time that quorum can be achieved and public notice requirements met. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. I will now ask for a mover and a second to approve the agenda for the special meeting of the Council of August 15, 2023. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any discussion? All in favor? And moves us on to item number 4, business, and a presentation on the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund from Manager of Planning, Mr. Simolini. And before you begin, Mr. Simolini, I wanted to take this opportunity to formally thank the planning staff for all the work you did on the childcare and affordable housing project. It's the first opportunity I've had to publicly thank staff for all their work, including our CAO, Mr. Boranowski, and all the partner organizations. It wasn't an easy lift, so thank you for everything that you and your staff did.
Thank you, Worship.
Over to you.
Great. So today, Council, I am going to be presenting on the Housing Accelerator Fund grant application that we have been working pretty tirelessly on the last couple weeks. Before I get started on the presentation, while we're handing out thanks, I do want to thank the Fernie Housing Solutions Working Group for helping out with this grant application, discussed at the meetings, and really constructive discussion we've had, really helped to sort of guide this application forward. Also, I want to give a big shout out to our planner, Erica Armquist, who was really important in laying the groundwork for the application while we were handling other applications and other things, and also dealing with holidays and capacity issues as well. So we're working to lay the groundwork for this application. So big thank you there as well. And then lastly, thanks to everyone on staff for helping to move on this application. So the Housing Accelerator Fund from the Canadian Housing and Mortgage Corporation, or CMHC. It was announced in April 2022, up to $4 billion in funds across the country. Now, it was meant for local governments, and then verbatim from their website to provide incentive funding for local governments that are encouraging initiatives aimed at increasing housing capacity or housing supply. So, seems custom fit for us. We did work really hard on putting the application together. There are a couple things here that were, requirements of the application. I'll just go through them quickly. There's housing growth targets. So we have to have a minimum 1.1% growth rate for Housing Accelerator Fund dwelling units. So that means that the funding that we would, if we do receive funding, our growth rate would have to increase 1.1% with units that use that funding to exist. And a minimum 10% growth between that growth rate and the non-housing accelerator fund growth rate. So what our growth rate would be without that funding, and then what our growth rate is with that funding, that would be a 10% increase in that. Secondly, we have to present an action plan in the form of 5 initiatives, and that is really the bulk of what the presentation or what the staff report talked about. Third, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. Third, housing needs assessment report. We had one completed in 2021, so we can include that housing needs assessment report as part of our application. However, it's important to note that we need to put forward to CMHC as part of our application. We come after the application deadline, but we do need to put forward a schedule of reviewing that report and updating it. And lastly, periodic reporting is required to CMHC if we are successful in that. So I do want to start this presentation by just saying that earlier today I had a meeting with the CMHC liaisons for the application, and they reviewed the application form that is presented in the agenda tonight. They thought that it was ambitious, perhaps too ambitious. And what they suggested was that we adjust some of our numbers a little bit. So I've done that, and I'll present the differences in those numbers. Essentially, what they had said is, and full disclosure, I didn't just make numbers up. I took projects that I knew may happen in the next 3 years and then used them to generate some increases versus what our 5-year average is projected over those 3 years. But they suggested that a 98% growth rate is something that the evaluation team for the grant application may look at and just not believe it and throw it out the window and not. It may hurt the grant application to be that ambitious. So with their recommendation this morning, I dialed back some of the numbers to make it more palatable for that application to move forward, and then hopefully you'll see some more success with the application. And I will get into those numbers here right away. So these numbers that you're looking at here were the original numbers that were presented in the staff report, where our projected growth rate without the Housing Accelerator Fund was 100 single detached units, 86 missing middle units, and 0 multi-family units. Now, where it says 0 multifamily units and the missing middle, there's a definition for missing middle in their application that I had misinterpreted a little bit, and they helped to explain it to me this morning, where missing middle is ground-oriented multifamily housing, so row houses, townhouses, things like that, whereas multi-unit is apartment buildings. What was confusing is their definition for missing middle said up to 4 stories. So when you see up to 4 stories, you think apartment block, especially here in Fernie. But if you're applying that definition to the big city, you've got a 20-story apartment building. So that was sort of where I got lost a little bit, but they did explain it to me. So you will see a difference in missing middle versus multi-unit in the updated numbers as well. So our projections with the Housing Accelerator Fund were 120 single detached units and 250 missing middle units for a total of 370. Now the growth rate there was 2.8% without, 5.56% with. The difference in growth rate was almost 100%. So basically we're saying we're doubling up. And that resulted in grant eligibility of over $7 million. And I had a discussion with your worship earlier, I guess last week, and I said $7 million doesn't seem quite right. I think we'd be more likely to get around 2. And sure enough, there's the updated numbers. That said, so we actually kept our projected growth rate without the HAF the same. And how I got to that number was I just took the average dwelling units that were constructed over the last 5 years, including the single detached, missing middle, and multi-unit, and then projected it over the 3-year period to get a total number. So again, 2.8% is the same. What we did for the projected growth rate with HAF is we kept single detached the same, and the suggestion of CMHC was that we keep it the same because the Housing Accelerator Fund isn't really focused on single family dwelling units. So you might see 100 either way. But where we raised up a little bit was in those missing middle multi-unit developments. And again, we have some idea of some projects that may be coming down the pipe. How CMHC thought that to put all of them in and say they're all going to happen was ambitious, so I just dialed it back and a lower number. So a total dwelling unit of 250, growth rate of 3.76%, which by far exceeds the 1.1% minimum, and is still scoring at the maximum level for the grant application.
Sorry, Mr. Simley, but, and maybe this is better asked when you get to the action plan level or the initiatives that you're putting forward. Those units that you haven't included will still benefit from if we receive housing accelerator funds to advance those initiatives.
That's correct, Your Worship. Yeah, so essentially what we're doing with these numbers is setting a target, showing that we can achieve that target. If we exceed that target, that's a good thing. And actually the way that the funding was explained to me, how it works is it's a 3-year program. You get 25% year 1, 25% year 2, 25% year 3, and the final 25% is awarded based on the goals that you presented in the application. So we were actually putting our even if we had been awarded that $7 million, we could have potentially just been losing 25% of it if we didn't meet the goals that we set.
Councilman McKenzie?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm just curious, Your Worship, about in the scaling back of that, has it been scaled, have the estimated costs been scaled back to be match up with the grant eligibility numbers?
Yes, Your Worship, through Councilor McIsaac, the couple $2 million projects that we were putting forward have been scaled back, and we'll get to that in a few slides.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No,
we're jumping ahead out there.
So our total grant eligibility is just over $2 million, which again, I had predicted that we would be lucky to get that. So here we are with, seem to hit right on that number. And CMHC has reviewed this. They reviewed it this afternoon after I sent it back to them, and they said these numbers look great. They're really happy. So the action plan. There are 5 initiatives that we had to bring forward, and they had to be initiatives that we hadn't done yet. When I first saw the list of sort of default initiatives from CMHC, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. We've already done a bunch of this stuff. But if you read the fine print, it says it has to be for items that you haven't done yet. But things like the delegation bylaw for development variance permits. We have rental tenure zoning. We've allowed for dwelling units above businesses in the CS1 zone. So we've done, and I know that's 3, just to name a few. We've done a lot already that would have fit, but we've already done that, and it's going to help in the long run getting us units over this 3-year span, but we needed to focus our initiatives on things that we haven't done. So initiative number 1 is to update the development cost charge bylaw and create a new fees and charges bylaw. As council is aware, the development cost charge bylaw is somewhat dated, so we have a chance to review it in the next year or so. And there's also been some form of announcement, although I don't know if it's finalized yet, that we may be able to use DCCs to contribute to affordable housing projects. I don't know the details of that. I don't know the details of that, but that, again, it lines up well that if we are doing our DCC by the workforce housing. So that gives us the opportunity to include that. Also to create new fees and charges bylaw, and I think that the main part of that is to have development pay for itself, where our fees for a development permit, for example, right now are quite low, and the amount of work that we have to put in staff really results in the taxpayers' dollars and our hours subsidizing that development. So if we can have a fair charge or an average charge for a development permit or development variance permit, a subdivision application, or a building permit, for example, it really brings that development to pay for itself. And then the tax dollars we're bringing in are more paying towards us doing this long-term plan that benefits the entire community rather than for the individual developments.
Councilor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. I had this one question, I was just wondering. So those 25, 57, 57, those 3 numbers, are they additive or are they like, if I do initiative 1 and initiative 2, I can only get 57 houses, or is it initiative 1, I do 25, initiative 2, I get an additional 57?
Yeah.
How's the value?
Yeah, your worship, through Councilor Ramirez, it is not cumulative, so there's an overlap there. So one housing unit may be influenced by 2 or 3 different initiatives, depending on how it works. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So the cost of that is estimated at $50,000, and we are assuming that we will create around 25 affordable housing units or multi-family housing units in the next 3 years. Initiative 2, municipal lands inventory. Over the last couple of years, we have gotten to the point where we adopted a municipal lands acquisition and disposition policy. That policy leads us to an inventory. We do know the lands we own, but we don't necessarily know the details of that land, the ins and outs. For example, does a piece of land require geotech analysis in order to be safe for development? Does it require an environmental assessment or environmental remediation in order to be safe for development or shovel ready? So that municipal lands inventory will really guide us and tell us how and what we need to do to get our lands to be shovel ready. So that's a $500,000 project, and the units created over the next 3 years is 57.
Thank you, Richard. Just looking at the pack here versus here, versus the one on the screen, we scaled it back from $2 million to $500,000 on this one. So let's assume we get $500,000 in grant. To what extent will it take you? Can you finish the entire inventory with just $500,000?
Yeah, Your Worship, through Councillor Radas, I believe that the $2 million was, assuming that we had a lot of money from the grant. The $500,000, I believe, will get us to the point where we can get some of the assessments done on the properties to tell us what the next step is. For example, if there's a piece of property that has environmental concerns, we might be able to get a phase 1 or a phase 2 environmental site assessment done on it. Whereas the $2 million might have paid for the actual remediation of the site. So there's sort of that line there. Again, I think that the main part is to get the basic inventory done, and that this $500,000 will pay for that quite easily, and then whatever money we have left, then we can decide how to use it to sort of prepare that land.
So, sorry, just for my own edification, so at each piece of land, we would understand what the next step would be to get to shovel ready.
Exactly, or if that, say, costs $200,000 to get that assessment done all over land, then we have that $300,000 to maybe do some work on getting some priority pieces of land.
Actually advance it, yeah, okay, thank you.
So initiative 3, sort of step 2 of that municipal lands inventory and advancing nonprofit housing provider partnerships. And again, that was a $2 million project, and it was sort of step 2 of that remediation type stage. This gives us the opportunity to work with nonprofit housing providers, but also if one does come forward with a question about a piece of land, or if they want to enter into a partnership with us for a long-term lease for an affordable housing project, for example, and there are issues with it, then we can then action some form of action that maybe the municipal lands inventory didn't pay for, and then action that sort of remediation or study or whatever the case might be there. Both of those are looking at 57 dwelling units, and that number is based on just having some knowledge of some potentially those units. Again, we won't know that they're going to happen for sure yet. Initiative number 4, a zoning bylaw update on parking regulations. Our zoning bylaw is old as it is, 1997 or 1998, I believe it was adopted. It's been amended over 200 times, I believe, through rezonings and text amendments. The parking regulations are quite antiquated, I guess. What we want to do is look at reducing or potentially eliminating parking regulation, off-street parking spaces for certain types of developments. That would be an exercise where we would probably bring in a consultant to do some work, best practices, look at different sites throughout town, different areas of town where parking reductions are something that can happen. And we do figure that would create up to 30 units in the next 3 years. That being, for example, if there's an affordable housing project proposed for historic downtown, our parking regulations right now would be very restrictive to being able to develop that, because we require 2 spaces per dwelling unit, and all of your land bases need to be used up for parking. Now we have, with updated parking regulations, can we then move away from that because the downtown is close to amenities, may not need to be able to park, may not be required. So, and last but not least, initiative number 5 is to purchase and implement permit intake tracking and inspection software. So this is one of the major pieces of the LGVAP project that was moving forward with McElhaney. What they're doing as one of their deliverables is producing a needs assessment that is going to guide what type of software we'll need. And speaking to Director Jansen, we'll be working closely with her asset management department to bring that software or to get an RFP together and advance software purchase and implementation. So that cost $200,000. Again, because we don't know what the needs assessment is, we really don't know what the software is going to cost. When we entered into the contract with McElhaney, they had said the software could cost anywhere from $5,000 to $500,000, depending on what's right and what fits. I think now seeing some preliminary sort of ideas and quotes on what software is, I have a pretty good idea it's not going to be $500,000. But budgeting $200,000, I think should give us enough space to be able to move forward with that. And the units created on that over the next 3 years is 63. Now, that was one where I had actually said that it's going to help create every unit in Fernie to be implemented over the next 3 years, which is true. But what CMHC had said is you have to consider what you actually produce without that software first, and then subtract that number. So that's why 63 units. It's actually 63 units is 25% of the number that you said would be produced. 25% of 200 is 62.5. Then around that. So there you have it. Tonight our recommendation, and this is a little bit of a pivot because of that change in the application earlier today. So our recommendation is that council endorse the initiatives listed in the action plan that are making up part of the city's application for the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund program. So essentially what you'd be doing is endorsing those initiatives. I also learned from CMHC today that part of the application going forward is a signed document from our chief financial officer that does say that these things are something that we can afford to do, and it does confirm that. So rather than having to actually approve the entire application, that works in its place for now. As far as approval of the application goes, if we get the funding, then we have the opportunity to come back to council, inform them of the funding being successful, and then council can approve the final application moving forward with CMHC. So if we do receive funding, we will come back to council with a formal recommendation to approve the finalized application. Thank you.
Thank you. So any questions for Mr. Simulini? Councilman Kaiser.
Sort of half of a question and half of a comment, Your Worship, and that is, looking through all these initiatives, it appears to me that and I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong here, we have to do all of them anyway, right? Like all of these have come up at some point in time over the last little while, so it's either a choice of applying for the money and doing it with the assistance or doing it without the assistance. Is that accurate?
Your Worship, through to Councilor McIsaac, it is accurate, and that was done strategically in order to, first of all, if we were throwing new projects into our work plans, then that's potentially throwing things right off, right? But also that if we do receive the funding for these projects that we are going to do, then we then make sure that they become a priority to move forward and ensure that they will happen rather than elongation of, as work plans change and then things throughout the years, we can potentially bring in help. Like through a consultant or extra staff to get these projects done.
Sure.
And if we are successful and that happens, then it does potentially free up our capacity to work on other items in our work plan that we might have seen further down the line.
Excellent, thank you.
Councilor Aiko.
I will motion that we endorse staff's recommendations. Can you wordsmith that one?
Yeah, it was.
Would you like me to read it to you?
I was going to ask if Mr. Simon could put it on the screen again, and then I will read it out. I did write it down while you had it up, but.
Yeah, I'll put it on the screen, just 1 second. You asked me to do it earlier, and I just get so carried away with it.
Well, and while you're looking for that, or sharing it again, Mr. Simley, are the reporting requirements onerous for this?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Your Worship. I think that the reporting requirements, I haven't researched exactly what we need to do to report. I've been just really busy getting the grant application together. But I can do a little bit of research on that and get back to council. I know that filling in the application was a lot of work.
It was indeed,
But
yeah.
it was rewarding in that, I mean, here we're talking about things that if we can get this funding, it's really, really big for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, and it just speaks to, I'm sorry, it just speaks to Councilor McIsaac's question a little bit. If we were going to do these things anyway, and you will be reporting them in your, as part of your work activity, that likely helps in terms of the overall reporting requirement.
Yeah.
Councilor.
Well, my question was very much following in that exact same vein of, are you able to give us an estimate of how much time the report took?
Sorry, your worship, through to Councilor Hamilton, just to clarify, how long?
Sorry, the application.
How long it took to build the application?
Application.
Staff hours, I would say probably 50 hours of staff time. So a week and a half.
Further to that, 50 hours of work for potentially $2 million worth of funding for projects that we need to anyways. Seems like a pretty decent ROI in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah. Councilor Susan.
I am eager to second the wordsmith motion here, but I'd just like to comment that anything we can do to streamline things is excellent, and if somebody else is paying, the more the better. Excellent stuff.
Thank you. And with that,
I'll read the motion, and then I can ask Mr. Singh to stop sharing perhaps. So I guess we have a mover and seconder, that council endorse the initiatives listed in the action plan making up part of the city's application to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation Housing Accelerator Fund.
we have a mover and a seconder. And any further discussion? Councilor Ramdas.
Just in terms of opportunity cost, it's $4,000 an hour.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Well done, Mr. Singh. I know that was a lot of work and you sweated over it.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Not least of all, the building is so hot.
It is very important.
You were literally sweating.
Thank you, and so that moves us along to item 4.2, CP Rail Culvert Ownership and Maintenance Agreement, a report from our Acting Manager of Engineering, Mr. Andrew Baird. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan and Council. Share my screen. Okay. Yeah, I'm here tonight to discuss the attached agreement with CP Rail to take ownership of the existing arch culvert at CP Rail on 36.75 within the Cranbrook subdivision. As it mentions in the staff report, this presents to council an agreement required by the Canadian Pacific Railway Company to address the ownership and maintenance of this culvert and proposed infrastructure that will be contained within it. And this, as I mentioned in there, is to advance development for Montana development. So some background to where
Can you
this,
speak up a bit, Andrew?
where this culvert is and what it's servicing, shown on the screen here. In red and dashed out in red is a portion of the Montana development that's moving forward. The red lines show the proposed sewer infrastructure that, as it currently sits within the Montana area, can't be serviced by gravity to where the current Montana neighborhood discharges. Circle it right there is sort of where the existing Montana development is, and it runs down Slalom Drive and across the train tracks through an existing pipe to our sewage treatment or main source lift station along Mountain Plain Drive. And there's quite a elevation difference between Montana Parkway and Slalom that require this section of utility to go somewhere else. And that is, as you see here, through the airport subdivision and down, connecting to the main throughput station on the purple line. So staff have been working with the developer for a while now, a couple of years, to come up with the best solution. And this is where the final proposal has landed. Reusing an existing culvert that's, that can house their sanitary infrastructure within a casing pipe. And then redirecting some of the storm drainage that culvert contains. And the ownership of that, like any development, putting in a sewer system would eventually fall on the city, which is why I'm here presenting to you tonight. In that the developer will construct this and pay for it and deal with the application fees, but following acceptable construction and their maintenance period, it would become ownership of the city. This type of agreement isn't unique. There are a number of existing sanitary crossings today, and about the same water main crossings as well. So I just showed them here on the screen, the existing ones in yellow and the proposed one in green. And that is pretty much my presentation. We're recommending that council direct staff to enter into this agreement with CPRED, but I will leave it up for any questions you may have right now.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Any questions? Councilor Ramos.
Thank you, Your Worship. What does this mean in terms of paving the mountain conduit? Sorry, must be there, but I didn't realize, I couldn't understand the connection between the two.
Yeah, Councilor Ramos through Mayor Milligan. The sanitary sewer that I was showing on my screen there before runs up Montaigne Parkway, and so it's part of constructing it before you pave it is the right thing to do once the sanitary sewer will get installed, then we're paving after that. And I believe that is the developer's plan.
Okay.
And this is the, I guess, the agreement, being the bottom end of that utility is where they need to start.
I see. And sorry, Mr. Baird, you talked about, so help me understand, it's an existing concrete culvert. The sanitary sewer line, will it, just a casing that will go through that culvert?
Correct.
And so it will displace, I think you said, some of the storm water?
Correct.
And where will that water go?
So, Mayor Milligan, through the council, the stormwater reconfiguration was designed by the developer's engineer, and it runs out to Coal Creek.
Okay.
Just upstream of the existing railway bridge there.
So it is accounted for?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilor Shoesmith.
I have one question, sort of loosely related. It's kind of more to do with procedure. So this is a special meeting of council following a committee of the whole meeting. And I note that we had a public participation period in the committee of the whole meeting. But in this agenda, there's no opportunity for any member of the public to speak to this item, I've noted. Is that, like, what's the procedure if somebody wanted to speak to that? I ask because I note that one of the participants is actually the developer in question. Yeah.
If I may, Your Worship?
Yeah, please.
Thank you. The special council meetings, the agendas are set specifically simply for the items that are on the agenda, and no other items are put on there. So the agenda is not a public participation period put into that. I don't know that the developer wouldn't like to speak to that necessarily, but it never has been set up in such a way that we put public participation period on a special meeting. The intent of this meeting wasn't, putting this on here wasn't necessarily to discount that opportunity. It was really more along the lines of ensuring that this matter, which became timely, was timely. We tried to move it, advance it as quickly as possible. We could have waited till next week and put it on to next week's regular meeting, but then the decision would have happened, like it would have delayed the development a further week. And it wasn't prepared in time to be on last week's meeting. So we were essentially trying to accommodate timeliness of the project in this case.
That all makes sense, although it seems somewhat kludgy. Thank you.
And so the intent wasn't to discount.
Oh, I was, no.
No, it was more along the lines of ensuring this continued forward.
All right, thank you very much.
Further questions? Councilor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just in terms of ownership, so this, we will start owning this well into the future. Any kind of analysis done on, you know, what the cost of ownership will be in the longer run? I just don't see any numbers here.
And sorry, is your question ownership of the culvert or ownership of the infrastructure itself?
The culvert.
Thank you. Mr. Hanson?
I can't really provide any, sorry, through Mayor Milligan to Councilor Ramos, I can't really provide any numbers, but one thing that we did want to mention was early discussions about the ability to develop that lower lands of the Montane subdivision. Initially started with a lift station in that area. So another asset we had to maintain and build. So as far as weighing the long-term costing of a lift station, O&M and replacement in 50 years, let's say, you're weighing it against a gravity feed sewer line. So although I don't have any good numbers to provide you, the balance right there is in our favor of a gravity feed system.
Yeah, and sorry, Mr. Heiser and Mr. Baird, look, when I read the agreement with CP, the draft agreement, while we may have ownership in letter, they're going to do what they need to do to protect their rail infrastructure, and as such, they will, it appears to me, they'll inspect it, they'll tell us when it needs replacing, you know, those things sort of, they're out of our hands to a certain degree. Mr. Heisler.
Yeah, through Mayor Milligan, that is the case in both the roads and the utilities crossing their rail.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Mr. Heiser's already answered the question, but the question that I had formulated in the back of my mind is how will this relate to our ability to go in and do work? Or is it going to be just like roads where they just do the work and we get a bill without any full warning?
Through to Mayor Milligan, it's likely they do the work and tell us how it is. Yeah, that's how it's been in the past.
Although our infrastructure, presumably, we would do the work, but it appears from the agreement it would be, at any time if they deemed it was a risk to the rail, they would observe it and monitor the work. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Shoesmith.
I think it kind of makes sense that that agreement would reflect the relative importance of the main rail link for most of the country's goods versus a subdivision in a small town. Really? Yeah.
Ooh. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll get Mr. McConnell to read the.
And I should note this, and this was reminded to me as well. To answer part of your question as well, Councilor Shoesmith, if I may, this decision can't be made in the committee meeting.
Yes.
This is why we're in
Of course.
committee meeting. So the recommendation is that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute the Canadian Pacific Railway Company agreement for the laying of pipelines on railway lands crossing the railway with respect to the crossing identified as mileage 36.75 Cranbrook subdivision and as attached to this report.
Can I have a mover? Councilor Shoesmith, seconder, Councilor Audia Kelly. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we will adjourn this special meeting. And thank you everyone for joining us.